Welcome to the Sales Scholars, where we talk to academic experts about anything and everything sales related. Our goal is to bring some of the top academic research in the world of selling and deliver it here to you in practical, easy to apply methods that can improve your business. Well, welcome to this episode of the Sales Scholars. I am excited, which is probably my regular term I use when I'm getting the show started, but I'm particularly that way for this episode as I get to welcome Dr. Johannes Habel. Now, he's from the University of Houston, so a colleague of mine. I get a chance to work with him regularly, and I am really looking forward to what we're going to talk about on the show today. So, Johannes, welcome.
Thank you very much, Craig. It's an honor to be here. Of course, I've been following the Sales Scholars podcast for a long time, and I've wanted to be a part of it for a long time as well. So thanks very much for having me.
Well, good. No, I'm glad you're here. And just for, maybe a little plug, but also for anybody who's listening, we just crossed over our 1,000th download of the podcast this week. And so we are excited that people have been listening. And I'm looking forward. I think this episode in particular, as I know we're going to talk about AI and its impact on sales, I think is something that lots of people are asking questions about. But the place I always like to start, Johannes, is just give people a little bit of background on our guest and kind of how in the world did you get into academia?
My way into academia was a little bit special, I have to say. So after my studies, I studied at the University of Mannheim. I studied management there. And after graduating, I wanted to go into practice, and I started my career in management consulting. So I was in Frankfurt, Germany, in a management consulting firm called Booz & Company. They are a spin-off of Booz Allen Hamilton, which I'm sure many know. Edward Snowden was basically a former colleague. I never met the guy, but he was basically a former colleague. And in Germany, the interesting thing is when you join consulting, management consulting, after 2 or 3 years, you don't go out to get your MBA like it's more common in the US, but typically you go out to get your doctorate. I can't tell you why. For some reason in Germany, people are very keen on having the DR in front of their name rather than the comma MBA after their name. So I got out, started my doctorate, and pretty soon realized, wow, that's a lot of fun, and I'd like to keep working in academia.
Gotcha. And so you were just, I guess, pursuing the doctorate because that's kind of what people did, and little did you know that you would end up in the academia space?
Pretty much, although I already had a notion that, or a sense that I might be interested by it, because my master thesis was actually in paper form. So my master thesis, I wrote a academic paper with a lot of stats, and I was able to publish it in one of the top journals in the field. So I knew that this line of work makes me very enthusiastic.
Since you've been at the Institute at the University of Houston, if I recall, one of our colleagues, John Pingle, tagged you with the nickname of Dr. J.
I love it.
Yeah,
it sounds very cool.
For people who are listening, if you are listening to this and you didn't grow up a basketball fan in the 70s, then you may not necessarily appreciate the reference as much. I grew up as a great basketball fan during that time. Julius Erving, aka Dr. J, the original Dr. J, but now I get to work at University of Houston with the academic Dr. J. So that's pretty cool.
I love it. I'm still wondering if I can actually pull it off being Dr. J, but I love it. It's only taught, by the way, by some of my students who got into the habit of calling me J-Dog for some reason.
J-Dog. Okay. Well, look, hey, I bet you didn't know that you would get so many nicknames early on as you made the transition over to Houston.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Well, look, I know that AI in particular is a kind of a specialty area of yours, especially how it impacts sales. AI and analytics in particular are really transforming the sales discipline. So I wanted to see if you just share a little bit with our audience as how you see these things impacting sellers today.
Yeah, absolutely. I think the first thing we have to make sure is that we're speaking about the same thing here. AI is a very big word. What we're talking about when we're talking about AI is very specialized algorithms that take over certain tasks for us, right? So we're not talking about a self-conscious humanoid robot whatsoever. We don't even know, to be honest with you, we don't know how to even build such humanoid self-conscious robots, which might be the ultimate form of AI, if you will. And it's not for lack of trying. There's dozens of projects trying to move into this direction. But when we talk about AI today, we talk about very specialized algorithms. That's the first thing that's very important for us to get out there, just to make sure we're on the same page.
Okay, and so
And
when you use that specialized algorithms, just for somebody like a non-academic person like me, I'd hear that as, look, AI is just sophisticated math.
exactly, yeah, exactly. Basically, it's statistics with a nice frame
Okay,
around it.
okay, okay. No, that's super helpful. And, you know, as you think about it, then in terms of how it's changing sales, where are some of the areas you see it impacting sales the most today?
Yeah. So what we can see is that AI solutions, AI algorithms, or tools are actually impacting the entire sales funnel, all steps of the sales funnel. So there are um, tools that either make you more knowledgeable or give you a little bit more speed in all activities along the sales funnel: lead generation, lead qualification, and consulting of customers, closing the deal, negotiating. For every step, every process that you have to complete when actually selling, there are tools that will help you along the way. I'm happy to talk about a couple of examples if you want.
Yeah, that'd be great because I think the examples always help bring it to a point where somebody goes, "Aha, okay, I think we can do that in our organization."
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, let's start top of the sales funnel. You generate leads, right? You're at a trade show and you collect 200 business cards or even more, and you get to HQ, and then somebody's got to type in these business cards into the CRM system. So in the old days, this might have been a poor intern or working student who needs to sit there for a couple of hours and type in the business cards into the CRM system. Nowadays, well, you can easily use AI. There are tools readily available where you take a picture with your smartphone of the business cards, and AI is going to recognize what's the name, what's the address, what's the phone number, what's the name of the company, and going to put it into the CRM system. This is not the most advanced AI solution you could possibly think of, but it is AI because, well, it mimics something that usually requires, or it does something that usually requires human intelligence, which is looking at the business card, discerning what is important, what is not important, and what is the name, and so on, and then taking action and putting it in the CRM system. And it saves
Okay.
time. Yeah,
Yeah, that last part, I think as you mentioned earlier, if the intent of AI is to help you increase your knowledge in something or increase your speed, it sounds like that's a great example of it takes something that took a while and allows it to happen much faster than it's been done in the past.
absolutely. Yeah. And then once you have a lead, I mean, you go into lead qualification in the sales funnel. So you have to make the decision: is this a lead where I actually want to put a lot of effort in, or is it a lead that's not going to convert anyway, right? So there are AI tools out there that score leads, that basically tell you what's the likelihood that this lead that you have is going to convert and is going to result in business. There are off-the-shelf tools such as Salesforce Einstein. Part of Salesforce Einstein is lead scoring. And the way this works is exactly as you said, advanced math, so just statistics. So basically what the AI does, it takes the data set of all leads that you had in the past. Of course, for all leads that you had in the past, we know, did they convert or did they not convert? And then we can look for statistical relationships, basically, what drove lead conversion. So for example, where did you source the lead? Was it a cold call or was it an inbound lead? So how did you generate the lead? Which company does the lead come from? What's the title, the job title of this lead? Is it somebody in purchasing, or is it even C-level? And all of these variables that you know about a lead might be correlated or statistically related to whether a lead converts or doesn't convert. Once you figure this out, well, then you can score new leads coming in and assign a likelihood whether they will convert down the road or whether they won't. And this is what Salesforce Einstein does, for example, every day in the background. They apply statistics, or nowadays we call this machine learning. So they apply statistics to find out these relationships and then score new incoming leads to see what is the likelihood that they're going to convert. And it makes you more knowledgeable, right? Because you can waste a lot of time working leads that have a very low chance of converting.
Yeah, and you know what? That's funny you say that. Have worked with companies, and I'm sure you have too, where when you look at the time that salespeople are spending on the lead generation step, as an example, and they're making lots and lots of calls, and the old adage of, well, it's just a numbers game, probably was true at one point in time, but it seems like as you're talking about AI, AI should help improve or reduce, maybe I should say, the amount of time it takes for a salesperson to get to a point where they have, generated a lead. Is that a fair thing to conclude?
Yeah, absolutely. So it makes you more efficient, right? So absolutely.
Okay. So if I'm a new salesperson and I'm building out my book of business in whatever space I'm working in, what would be some of the ways that I could utilize AI, or some steps I might take early on that could be, you know, small transitions into utilizing some of this great stuff that's available out there?
Yeah, I mean, when you're a salesperson and you want to utilize AI, as you said, there are a lot of tools out there that might help you with certain activities. But a lot of these solutions are actually not really solutions that a salesperson can decide to take. It's rather solutions that businesses have to decide to implement. I mean, a simple tool like taking pictures of business cards and having them translated into, well, what's the name and address? That's easy. You could do this by yourself. But when it comes to things like lead scoring, this is typically something the company will have to make a conscious decision to invest in. Or other solutions like customer churn prediction, right? AI that predicts for every customer what is the likelihood this customer is going to churn, so stop buying in the next 2 or 3 months. That's also something the individual salesperson cannot really buy a tool for, but this is a company-wide decision.
Gotcha. And so then maybe part of it is looking for these simple tools, like you talked about, this business card scanner as a tool that I could use to save some time. And then the other part might be advocating with inside of your organization to step into the AI space, specifically around a topic. Like maybe it is, improving the lead quality through the use of AI. Or I know I've seen, we use some technology at the institute with our students, to help find leads and get contact information. Zoom Infos happens to be one we use. I know there are multiple tools out there in the marketplace that can provide similar value. But do you see value in using those types of tools to help with certain parts of the sales funnel?
Yeah, yeah, definitely. I mean, and there are tools, off the shelf tools for basically all the steps of the sales funnel. We discussed the top of the sales funnel so far, right? So lead generation, qualification, but whatever step you need to take, there are tools out there, including recognizing the personality of customers, for example. There are tools that give you, based on the LinkedIn profile of a prospect, a prediction of what is the personality in terms of the DISC model, which is a frequently used personality profiling model. What's the personality of a prospect? And it equips you with some advice how to talk to these customers if you want to influence them, convince them, or negotiate with them.
Okay. Yeah, it seems like today a salesperson has the ability to be more informed than ever with the relevant information before they ever approach a prospect,
Yep.
because of the information and the tools that are out there in the space.
Which is just fair, I guess, because customers are also more informed than ever. So it's basically we're just matching what customers are doing as well, right?
Yeah, it's true. I feel like to a certain degree, sales is in this day and age trying to catch up a bit to where customers are. because customers have technology has enabled them to have access to so much information that the modern day salesperson is still trying to figure out exactly how to best engage with that prospect, find the prospect, trying to turn them into a customer.
Yeah, totally.
So
Totally.
I know research is a regular thing you're doing as an academic, and I know you in particularly seem to always have cool research projects going on. And so one of the things I'm curious about is in the context of this AI conversation, have there been any insights that you found through research that you think are particularly helpful when it comes to how to think about AI today with sales?
From a sales perspective, and also what might be most interesting to our listeners, is the more psychological research that examines, well, how do you get salespeople or sales organizations to adopt this kind of AI or analytics? And how do you overcome resistance in the organization? Because when we talk about these kind of tools, of course, they can evoke fears in employees. And the question is, what do you do about that?
Yeah. Yeah, that's funny. I think there's probably any organization who's attempting to implement new technology or even new processes related to going to market is probably having their challenges. Have you come across any common challenges that organizations face when trying to implement new technology?
Yeah, yeah. I guess the two big challenges out there is, first of all, where do you get the technology from? And then second of all, once you have the technology, how do you get your sales people and your managers to use the technology effectively? These are the two big challenges. I'm happy to talk about both of them if you want.
Yeah, that would be great because I think that as you mentioned those, I think about some of the companies that I've worked with, and they're facing some of those same things. I mean, I remember a technology conversation with the owner of a particular company, and the comment was, "We're not going to get any more technology because I already have things in place, and there's too many options out there. Until we start using what we have, I'm done shopping."
Yeah,
And I thought, man, that's so indicative of what probably many companies face today at some level or another about, man, what do I buy? So yeah, how do they address those types of things?
yeah. I mean, the universe of AI solution providers is so vast, right? You have thousands of companies, from very established companies such as Salesforce.com to little startups who develop an AI tool that might be used by sales organizations. So it's very hard to keep the overview there. I mean, chiefmartech.com publishes a marketing technology landscape every once in a while, where they basically map the different providers out there in different buckets or in different topic areas. And it's just a very convoluted, complex map of providers. So when a company wants to buy an AI tool off the shelf, the first thing, of course, is screen what is out there. No, I mean, the very first thing is make sure you know what you actually, which problem is it that you want to solve. For example, in your sales funnel, is there a specific lack of knowledge that you want to solve, or is there a specific lack of speed that you want to solve? The two big things that you can use AI for. And once you've identified this, well, then is there a provider out there that offers a solution for you? Chances are it's not one, but it's dozens, if not hundreds of providers who offer solutions that you could potentially use. And then the question is, how do you find out how good these different providers are? Not just in terms of pricing, but how good is their AI solution? It's very unlikely that these AI solutions all deliver the same level of quality, but they will have, depending on how they were developed and which machine learning algorithms they use, that they have a different predictive validity or accuracy. How good are the predictions that they make, for example? Now, evaluating this is not very easy, and also, as whenever I have a look at providers, they, well, few of them do a good job actually giving you good insights into how good their AI actually is. So when screening the market for potential providers and then evaluating their quality, I would say when you're working sales and you want to do this, involve your data scientists, if you have data scientists. Nowadays, in big companies, 20 to 30% of big companies employ data scientists. I'm sure this number will increase. It is the big attractive job these days, one of the most attractive jobs, and one of the rarest resource you can find on the job market. But if you have a data scientist, use them when you want to purchase off-the-shelf AI tools, because they will be able to ask the right questions to the providers to gauge how good is the AI tool that they are trying to sell to me.
Yeah. It's a good point about getting the right people involved for the selection. I can't tell you, and this is probably a separate podcast episode with somebody, but when I read about what some of these technologies do, and I read how they describe it, and I still don't get exactly what they do. And I think, to your point of describing the way that they can more accurately help in whatever that step in the sales funnel is, or whatever the intention of what you're trying to improve. But yeah, it's a challenge out there to get a grip on it, for sure.
You know what? It's funny that you mentioned this, because I feel exactly the same way. So whenever I hear about a new cool tool, then I look it up online. I want to know what it does. And as you say, sometimes it's very difficult. Although I work in this field, it's very difficult to find out what specifically are they promising this tool to do. They use big words like if more effective and increase sales productivity and whatsoever. But now tell me specifically, if this is AI, so it's going to make predictions and take actions based on these predictions, what is predicted and which kinds of actions are taken? Very often, when I look at websites, I have no idea what they are actually promising.
Yeah. Yeah, I know. Someone we work with their marketing or their branding people for better descriptions. So it sounds like that selection of tool thing is a big deal. But then the other one that I want to make sure I get your perspective on, because I know it's a big one, is okay, how do I get my salespeople to use this?
Yeah, and that's a big one actually, because I mean, it's been a problem with any kind of sales technology, right? So whenever we use technology, there are early adopters. You don't have to worry about them. There are people who will never get it, and there's a big chunk of people, maybe 60, 70, 80%, who you will need to really convince to use this new technology. And the question is how you do it. Now, when it comes to AI, there are, I would say, a couple of big concerns, and these big concerns that employees frequently have require different approaches to handle them. The first one would be that AI evokes fears. I mean, it's AI. It sounds very mysterious, and there's machine learning and whatsoever. So, is the company actually trying to replace me through AI in the long run?
Yeah, I
And
think is there a chance that some of that's a product of the movie industry and movies like Terminator and other places where AI technology, took over. And I
yeah,
think people attach some of these misperceptions to that fear. So that's funny that that's a big issue.
absolutely, yeah. By the way, now that you're saying this year, I just heard Matrix 4 is going to come out. One of my favorite AI movies out there. I look forward to this, but that's a different
Outstanding.
topic.
Now we're going to just make more salespeople more scared.
Yeah. No, but yeah, absolutely. I think this fear um, stems from the fact that most people don't have a very good understanding of what it is we're talking about and what it is we're not talking about. We are not talking about the self-conscious humanoid robot, but about these specialized algorithms. And more often than not, these specialized algorithms are gonna enable salespeople, but not replace salespeople. So think about all the examples we've mentioned so far, like a business card scanner, like lead scoring, like personality recognition. Most of these tools are not equipped to simply take over the job of a salesperson, and then the salesperson um, is sacked. That's not what's happening. But these tools, they enable the salesperson to become a little bit more knowledgeable and a little bit faster, and thereby more effective and more efficient. And that's
Yeah.
the message that companies will have to put out there to manage employees' fears.
Yeah, that's a really good point about making sure that that's part of the message. not something that is unmentioned, but something that maybe you can lead with. I like that distinction.
Yeah, yeah. And I mean, this, as I said before, that's one of the problems whenever we talk about technology. I mean, for the past 10, 15 years, companies have moved more and more toward online channels, e-commerce, and there they had the same problem, right? Employees fear that they might be replaced by e-commerce and online channels, but to some extent, of course, this is happening. But when we look at the complex sales industries, complex B2B, for example, industrial markets, more often than not, e-commerce is there to enable salespeople and save them time so they don't have to drive out and pick up every individual order, but they can focus on the thing that's most fun, which is consulting customers. And I see a clear parallel between this and between the fear of AI right now. I think AI can actually make selling more fun. And companies need the right messages to make sure their employees understand this. But I would say it all starts with making sure people have the right notion of what AI actually is and what it is not.
Gotcha. Yeah. So address the fear.
And then research shows, for example, that it helps when you give your employees the power to override an algorithmic output. So when the algorithm says go left, and the employee has the power to say, I acknowledge that the algorithm says goes left, but in this particular instance, I think it's better to go right. This fosters high acceptance. When we talk about analytics, basically, which is very closely related to AI, we are talking about basically not prescribing a course of action. It's not prescriptive analytics, but simply equipping employees with a recommendation what to do. But this recommendation is not set in stone.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. I always think about the recommendations as, look, this is a recommendation based on sound math and some historical data, analysis of historical data. But to your point, I think important to understand is that, it's a recommendation. Yeah. And it's not replacing the salesperson. But in that case, it sounds like, it's helping the salesperson. Exactly. It's as you back to what you talked about in the beginning. The intent of AI, if perceived correctly, is, look, it should make us smarter, and it can make us faster. And so I think that brings a ton of value to businesses to think about. So, well, look, Johannes, we are at the end of our show, but I appreciate what we had a chance to cover. I love how you made the concept of AI and then specifically kind of how to think about it just flat out much easier, because it's not a question of if you'll be using AI in your organization. Most probably are in some form or fashion today, but many likely will at some point in time. So thanks for sharing.
Absolutely. Thanks very much for having me.